To thrive as a franchisor in a franchise system, you need great lead generation, qualified franchisee candidates that share your culture, are well capitalized, come on board and help you grow your franchise system. So, how do you develop great leads? How do you close great leads? We're going to talk about secrets to franchise sales lead generation. And very few people that are better to have this conversation than Dan Claps. Dan is a franchise industry leader, lead generation, closing deals. Dan, this is going to be a fun conversation today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Charles, for having me today. I love your intro video.
Yeah, no, look, this is good because Dan, so many franchisors don't know what direction to go in, right? We work with so many hardworking emerging franchisors, and the goal is to get them on the right track. I'm a big believer in a 5-year growth strategy. Years 1 and 2, season your franchise brand, sell organically, build that foundation, 3 to 5 franchisees, build around them, and then accelerate years 3 to 5, look for private equity. But if we're in the mix, if we're thinking about startups, if we're thinking about emerging, if we're thinking about mature brands, like let's peel back the curtains a little. I mean, you have so much in-depth experience. And let's dive into the lead generation process and really overall, how do you view if you're working with a franchisor, you're sitting down with the management team, how do you even get them to have the right mindset in thinking about lead generation and sales?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the start is understanding that while you might have the next greatest brand, the next Orange Theory, the next massage envy of your industry, even if you do, the end user does not know that yet, and you can't expect that just because you've got a great business and it's doing well in your local market. You went out, you got a franchise disclosure document, you got all your franchising agreements together, and that the world is just going to come pouring in, because they're not. They don't understand your story yet. They don't know you, and everything about getting to this point of becoming a franchisor, you've kind of entered the big leagues now, and you're competing with all of the other franchises. And so I think the first thing I would say to a franchisor is the mindset of, hey, look, keep that in the back of your mind, how great your concept is, because that's what's propelling you to work hard and make it happen. But remember that no one else knows that yet. And there, you're going to have to really grind and work at it to get that story out in the first few years.
It's so interesting as you're speaking, because I know you've been very successful with a number of brands and your efforts in the franchise space. It's just interesting how I think you're referring to franchisees as end users or franchise buyers, which you use the term end
That's
user.
That's my
Yeah,
millennial.
but then I like it. I'll tell you why I like it. Because you really, as a franchisor, need to sort of turn your franchise offering into a product that you're selling.
Right.
Right. And so the mindset that you're advocating, that I love, because I believe everything, whether it's a service, whether you're selling franchises, everything needs to be built as if it's a product on a shelf with clear value. And so number one, I love that you use the term end user, because it's really it's shifting the focus away from you as franchisor to that franchisee, that franchise candidate. Right. And so that to me that's pretty eye-opening. The other thing I love that you say, and I'm a big believer in, you use this phrase, they don't understand your story yet. And I love that because so many franchisors don't even focus on their story. And I'm not talking about something that's abstract or fake, but they just jump into the franchise market and like, we're a gym, we're a restaurant, and here's what we're going to promote. You pay a 6% royalty. And like, oh, great, that's great. But like, to your point, like, what is that story and how does that fit in with that end user, that franchisee candidate?
Right. And it's realizing that they really don't know anything that's in your mind, in your head. They don't know about it yet. And it's going to take a lot of time to explain it. I'll just give you a quick example. I experienced this in my own life. I've led a couple different businesses, and all kinds of things will happen over 3 or 4 months. And then I'll go to a family event and someone in my family will say, hey, how's XYZ going? I'll think, what do you mean? Well, how's that going? That was in the past. I'm not doing that anymore. Didn't you know that, we did this, this, and this already? And the family member has no idea, because all the things that are going on behind the scenes, that's not out front and center. And so the reason I'm making that analogy is, you have this great business. You just hired your operations team. You guys had record store growth in your local market, but none of that is out there in the open yet. And even if it is, it's going to take time for that story to get out to them. So, just going to the franchise lead gen side as humbly as possible, knowing that you're basically starting at zero when you first start, as far as your brand recognition on the franchise level, not the consumer level that you've already, grown.
Well, and then connecting the dots, that your points, right? So you enter, right? Dan's mindset is, hey, you need to know your end user, you need to know your story, and you need to grind, right? You're entering a whole new field. And I think what you're advocating and your focus here is Dan's point here too, and this is something I believe, is they don't know your story. They don't know all the great things that you're doing inside. And I think franchise sales websites, as a part of that story, should be talking about that process and procedure. Hey, this is how we manage inventory systems. This is the technology solution we're working on. Here's how we're going to light up sales initially. And I think it's the opportunity for emerging brands that everyone's overlooking on the startup space.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at websites, there's so many that unfortunately they're talking about franchising, but they're talking about how great their product is instead of the franchise. Which, again, going back to what you said, Charles, the franchise is the product now. The consumer that you're targeting is the prospective franchisee. I personally think, and you need a totally separate website for franchising. Really, or at least a really dedicated page. The most amount of energy and time and resources really on a website standpoint should be put towards a great website, because again, you've entered the new stratosphere. You're now competing with the big businesses in franchising. And so it's time to really, if you're capable of, financially, if you're able to make that investment, I think an investment in the right website on the Fran Dev side is going to pay off in the long run.
I like that example with the website and sort of the end, but let's reverse engineer this, because I like the points you're raising and how you're focusing on this, Dan. First of all, too, when even though we're doing legal, before our clients launch, as we're developing the FDD, we actually have a brand story masterclass, series of videos and a workbook. And the end result for us is to try to help our clients understand, hey, when we come out of the gate, what is the transformative headline on our website? What are the 3 uniques, real uniques, right? What is a part of our story? And how do we create validation through the founders when we don't have franchisees yet? But then in a hypothetical world, because I'm also a big believer that emerging brands can outmaneuver mature brands. And that's my interest, is let's outmaneuver them. But let's just say franchise brand X, they've just launched. They have their franchise sales website. I know we can't get to specifics because we're calling it brand X. What are the things you'd want to see on that would make you say, wow, these guys get it, could be different. And even though my candidate is looking at this larger brand, these are people they should speak to.
Well, I think you hit the nail on that when you first said about that big, large headline that, really pulls you in. I actually remember, Charles, I don't know if you remember this. This was years and years ago, but I showed you a website I had made, and you right away said, where's your big headline? So I very much remember that, and I went back and changed it. At the time, I was selling franchises, and we changed the big headline to "We create business owners," right? Because what we did was we helped them become a business owner. But I think that big headline is important. Obviously, explaining your USPs, unique selling proposition, on how you stand out in the marketplace, not just as a product, but more so as a franchisor, right? What you're offering that separates. And I think that one right there is a USP. If you're competing with a large brand, PE-backed brand, and you're the underdog or the smaller brand, that's not a negative. That's a USP in a lot of cases. There's a lot of prospective franchisees that want to be part of that ground floor opportunity being early in with a franchisor. There are plenty of people that have that entrepreneurial side where they realize, hey, you know what, I'm going to get in with the founder on day, on unit 3 or 4 versus unit, 500. So I think on the website, if that's something you have, then turn it into a strength that you are a younger brand and that you are going to be more involved with the franchisee, because you're younger.
Well, Dan, let's stick with that because I think that's a great point, right? Right. Owning the underdog status. Where I get frustration when I see brands not gain traction is you need to be genuine, right? So it's not just because a PR company said this or more. So I think there's ways to demonstrate, right? That underdog status and how it wins, right? But I think you got to put substance behind it in terms of, hey, here's our technology solution, here's our coaching structure, here's our whatever, and you're not going to get that with the bigger brands. You have unique insights into franchisee candidates, right? You have experienced and intercepted them at all parts of their journey. So connecting these two, what are some insights about the franchisee candidate, their journey, what they would want to see in terms of the underdog status, and what would give them comfort, right? That, hey, when I go to bed tomorrow night after I sign a franchise agreement, I made the right decision. I can do this, and they're going to help me do it.
Yeah, well, I think if we're still speaking to the website, you want to have, like, I'll just give you an example of what I would do. If I were to go out and be a franchisor and I had no units, but I really had this passion for getting people into business and successful, then I would sell me. I would sell the fact that I am going to be, no one wants you to make money. I wouldn't say this on your website, but a tone of no one wants you to be no one wants you to be successful more than other than you and your family than me, right? Because I'm only successful as the founder of this new brand. We truly are partners on the first 10, 20,
Right.
I'm taking as much more of a risk than you are, because if you buy that franchise and fail, it's going to be really hard for me to get units 2, 3, 4, 5 open, right, or sold. And so in much better language, get a website, someone to help you. But I think I would explain the reality. You talk about being genuine. The truth is, we are vested in you succeeding because we're so young too. Together, we're getting into this. And then the other thing with the website, just what I would tell you is, a website that converts is not what you maybe think would look like. And so a lot of people, they go out and I think they're a little bit behind on the times where they make these big information websites and there's all this copy and all of that's great, but the start of your websites, what's the point of it? It's to drive when you drive traffic there, it's to convert it so you can get them on the into your funnel. And so I think you should definitely, this is a whole niche, and so there's professionals in just fran dev websites that can help you if you're if you go that direction.
Well, and I think one of your points there, which is important, is I think good franchise websites are going to have a contact form right in the top right-hand side of the mast, right? That's the most valuable real estate on a website. And to your point, what good is a pay-per-click ad or organic contact if they're not filling out a form and raising their hand and making contact with you, right? So I think that's for sure important. How would you summarize? I'm a franchisor. And I asked you, Dan, what are franchisee candidates looking for? Like, what's their thought process when they're going through this journey? And what are some of the things that tip the balance one way or the other?
Well, I think the first thing, now granted, I work in my previous 7 years of being in this space and working with candidates, I've mostly worked with the candidate that comes from some sort of executive background. And I think that majority of franchise consultants, brokers, whatever you want to call them, that's the typical candidate that they work with. So I'm going to touch on that much more than perhaps a multi-unit food owner. That is a different candidate that I don't interface with as much. But when you look at the average executive who wants to transfer their skills into owning a business, which I think is the best franchise candidate, especially for an emerging brand, they have a proven track record of managing people, they have a managing process. They're typically professional. They work in a team. They have retirement funds saved up and good credit, right? They've had a stable career so far. So they make great new franchise owners, and what they're looking for. Well, the first thing they're looking for, and I think this is something that people kind of miss a lot of times, is before you sell them on your brand, sell them on or help them decide if they want to be a business owner in general, right? So if I was a franchisor and I was talking to a candidate, the first thing I would do is say, look, I'm a franchisor, here, we're XYZ business, but I'm really passionate about people become business owners. Not everyone's cut out to be, though. Let's talk through it and let's see if it's a good fit for you to look into businesses. And if so, we'll talk about my brand. And if not, there's 4,500 other ones out there. And so if, in FranDev, if you can go into it with an approach on your website and your sales collateral, et cetera, that we're going to help you as a brand decide if franchising is for you or not, whether it's with us or in general. I think that's an approach that the candidate really, really will appreciate, because when you go on the websites, on the portals, or on Google, and you type in, how do I buy a business, your phone blows up. I've been through it when I was looking for a franchise. It's very daunting and overwhelming. And when all of a sudden everyone's trying to sell you a franchise, you're feeling pretty alone. And so if you could take an approach of, hey, like, we get it. It's not easy to decide if you want to be a business owner. Let's talk through that first. Then if so, we could explain the benefits of our brand. I think that'll go a long way with these candidates when they're early in your funnel.
So which brings up, I love the description there of, hey, when you're looking to buy a franchise, sometimes you could feel alone, right? And that alone feeling, and that's where I think value, and certainly this, comes in working with franchise brokers. We have this executive candidate, right, now working with a franchise broker, which I think we both believe, good franchise brokers create good value for franchisors and franchisees. Now, reverse engineering a little, we're the emerging franchisor, good product, what's the winning strategy with the brokers? Because now it's tough, right? I'm an emerging franchisor. I'm competing with other brands that may be working with franchise sales organizations that are amazing, right? That have big track records, that may have multi-year item 19s. But so how do I enter the space, build trust with the brokers, and at least ignite that conversation, or become one of the few emerging brands where the brokers are like, hey, you got to check this one out?
Sure. So I think there's three elements, and we're gonna assume the brand is a great brand, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So let's assume the brand is a great brand, and they have all those boxes that are checked. So I would say, number one, get into the broker group networks and make sure all of your content, your videos, your collateral is engaging, right? Again, you're in the big leagues. You're competing with lots of big brands. So make sure you spend the energy and time, if it's yourself on Canva or you have someone in marketing, I don't know, but make it really great marketing collateral that you're going to then put onto those websites. Because that's number one, what brokers are going to see. Number two, no one's going to like this answer, but it's the truth. You need to put money into it. The broker groups make money through franchisors being a part of their organization, and the more you can sponsor or advertise or go to conferences and get in front of the brokers through their platforms, whether it's through IFPG, there's the elite membership, the other networks, there's, I'm sure, all kinds of sponsorships. I think it does help getting at that high level if you can. My third answer is much more grassroots. Take the time with the brokers to do something special. So again, if you can't, especially if you can't do option two that I mentioned financially, which I totally get when you're starting out, then win with relationship. So Charles, it fascinates me that there's not more franchisors that get on an airplane and meet with a franchise consultant one-to-one for dinner. Do you know how, like, when I was a franchise broker, if you called me and you said, hey, I want to meet you specifically, Dan, I've heard you're a great consultant, and I'm coming to New York and we're going to lunch. No questions asked. I'm taking you out. At least at that point, you would have my attention at lunch to really pitch your brand. Not when there's all these people around, not when there's, I know that you have to be doing that or you paid money to have my attention, but you actually took the time to build a one-to-one relationship, and that's free to do mostly. So those would be my 3 recommendations.
Dan, so like this is our checklist for engaging brokers, right? Which I love. So let's go through them a little. And so the first point on the content, the videos, the collateral, the engagement, I think that for sure is the most critical factor. And the thing that when we're working with our clients, what I explain to them is no matter what our budget is, we want the money we're spending to have enduring value. So if we create engaging videos and engaging, right, those videos are going to work for us not only this year, but multiple years as we build up. The one thing that, again, we have our course that I think is so important for our clients is before you even get to that, everyone jumps to, we're really great, or here's our item 19 that sort of is the same revenues as everyone else, and we charge 6% royalty, or we provide training. Everyone else does that, right? So for me, even before you get to that video and collateral, as a team, we need to sit down and do a deep dive. Like, what's that special feeling you had when you first opened your doors? How did this transform your life? Which gets to your point, right? You gave an example earlier. After we had a conversation, you changed your headline to, "We create business owners," which says to me, Dan Claps, when he created that headline, he's not thinking about him. He's thinking about the transformation of his clients, right? So I think even before the videos, do it with purpose. No BS. We're all beyond it. So I think that is so critical. And what I love about it, it also gives the validation. It's like, hey, we don't have franchisees, but this is our story and can be yours. So I think that's critical. I recommend to our clients 6 months after launch to join a broker group. And I explained to him that in the first 2 years, I'd still be focused on organic. But the reason I recommend joining the broker group is to build your franchise IQ, honor the process, see what they care about, start seeding the relationship. I also tell them I don't expect them to have deals from brokers right away, unless you're a very unique. But let's start building the foundation. We got to earn it. Where I differ a little on spending that money in sponsorship, number one, I think that's probably 2 years down the line or later. My problem is when I see brands at conferences and events and they're paying for premium recognition, I'm good. I think they should be at the conferences and events. I think the broker groups have tremendous value. What I get a disconnect is they're not ready to be in the sponsorship position.
Sure.
Because they can't carry that conversation. They don't have that. The things you're saying is a number one. So many times they don't have that yet. Now, maybe they use that to build it up, but to me, that's a little further down the line. I love it. Right? 3, I think this is where the big win happens. I think like every industry, the franchise industry is in many ways becoming decentralized. The value of brokers is so apparent, and the value of great brokers, you could see it. I mean, they're leading professionals. And so, yeah, I mean, you should be building those relationships. And again, that takes time. So I think that's a great checklist. I mean, for engaging brokers.
Yeah. And, brokers will, I think a great point too is you can get into the groups. Because brokers kick your ass. You go to speed networking, one of these groups, and they'll hit you with these questions as a franchise. I've seen it. You're a franchisor, you don't have the answers ready to go. They eat you alive in a good way. It's just like being a franchisor, your franchisees are always going to push you to keep going and make the system better. Brokers are going to challenge you too. And there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with going into the group, learning, oh, wow, we really do need to get a lot more of this figured out. Go back. I was just saying this to someone. I've been traveling a ton, and I'm about to stop because I'm going to get into the lab, I call it, get into whatever I do next and build that. Head down, nothing else. And 2 years go by, and all of a sudden you've got a product and you're back out promoting it. And so I think, kind of to your point, Charles, if you're a franchisor and you spend the first couple of years or the first year refining your systems, you go into the broker groups, maybe you find out you got to make some adjustments. Well, great. You found out sooner than later. Go back to the lab, if you will, fix it. And guess what? You come back as long as you didn't, egregiously screw it up with the brokers, they'll hear you. Oh, wow, what did you change? And maybe a lot of them will actually gravitate towards you because you took their advice and went back and humbly, made your changes.
Yeah, Dan, I'm on board. Like you build up that IQ, and that's why I recommend 6 months in, do it. The problem I see, and I get a lot of LinkedIn messages from franchisors, startups that haven't worked with us, but they're not gaining traction. They'll have some questions, and I get a lot of LinkedIn messages. Hey, Charles, you talk about seasoning your franchise offering. What does that really mean? And for me, it's just year 1 and 2. Building the brand story, building the videos, focusing on your organic reach, and starting to enter the broker market to build IQ. Let's learn, let's get strong let's build up our arsenal. A lot of times they'll, and this will get into my next question, which is they'll say, yeah, we started with a development company that said they're going to do our sales. Well, it turned out we got leads, but no deals, and it wasted time. Then we spent some time on portals. We did it ourselves, kind of didn't work. And then I get the slides now, but we're now joined a broker group. Here's our broker offering. And it's, 50% royalty, 50% franchise fee. Here's our royalty. Here's this. I go to their website. They're not going to gain traction in the broker group. Just because you're offering a broker commission, it's like so many levels beyond that. And I think that's part of the learning process everyone has to get to. Dan, you mentioned, so because I want to ask you about a bunch of different things, but like, I want to also ask you about portals. But Dan, when we started this conversation, we created this broker checklist, our 1, 2, 3, right? Content, invest, and that special relationship. You said to me, hey, Charles, I'm assuming it's a great brand. They hit the checkmark items for being a great brand or being a ready brand. I'm not saying everything. What are some of those checkmark items of, hey, I'm now a franchisor, I need to have these things?
Well, it obviously depends on each industry that your vertical that you're in. I think that if you're now a franchisor, you need to know your numbers. I meet a lot of franchisors, and the first questions you ask is that when I was a broker is, about the numbers, the average unit volume, the unit economics overall. And so if you don't know that, that's the first thing you need to know is just your numbers, gross revenue, margin, net margin, everything of that nature, how much it's going to cost to open, etc. I think that to say that you're ready, if you don't have any franchisees, you have to really have a predictable. Everything's predictable. Everything's set up. You know that you've got a person that's going to be able to train. If it's not you, then you're someone on your team that can train the first franchisee. If you're going to brokers, again, you're going to. Well, if we're talking about going to brokers, I do agree. I think you said something about growing organically first before going to the broker channels, and I agree. I think you need to get your first units if you can through organic or through portals or any type of lead gen. I think. I don't mean to make a lot of my points about spending money. I don't think it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is in my time leading Nurture Assist, which is a lead generation company, there were so many times where I would say to a franchisor, if there's anywhere to spend money, it's lead. If you've got all the story and everything together, it's lead generation, because the good news is you're most likely going to recoup that marketing spend. In other words, God forbid you spent, I don't know, $30,000 on lead gen. You hopefully should then close a deal and get the franchise fee and recoup that money. If you don't, then perhaps you're going to learn a lot that you do need to stop and go back to the lab, as I call it, and talk with Charles or someone and figure out what the hell's going on, because you spent $30,000 and didn't get a deal. And that might be very well true, but it might be that you need to make some tweaks. Or it could be another thing is it could be you're not ready and you need to go back to the business and make it stronger. That happens too sometimes.
Dan, let's, because you touched on a bunch of good things, right? Tomorrow, or today, I've turned over my franchise brand to you. We're an emerging franchisor. We're in a good space, strong item 19. I have no franchisees yet. We have clear differentiators in the marketplace. And when a candidate comes to us, they're going to be engaged in a process, right? We have a process. They're going to be engaged by our founders. They're going to like our founders. They're going to like our mission. And by the way, before you take on this project, Dan, we've done our homework. We have great videos telling our founder story. We have great videos about our process and systems. And we have a process. Candidate comes in. I give you an imaginary budget. We don't have to say the dollars, but we could talk in terms of percentages, right? Where are you going to absolutely spend money, not spend any money, and avoid at all costs? How are you going to allocate our imaginary budget for our imaginary franchise company for this, it's a difficult conversation, but I just threw it to you, Dan. Here's our imaginary company. What are you doing? And by the way, Dan, I'll be realistic. I have 2 deals that I think we could close organically, but over the next 18 months, I want 5 other deals to close.
Yeah. Well, I'll preface by saying this is imaginary because I don't have the ability to work with you at this current time.
No, I get that part, right? Yeah, this is imaginary.
Yeah, imaginary. But what I would say would be, so I go back to, if there's anywhere, well, are we assuming that the website's made?
Yeah. So I have a website.
Yeah.
Focused on transformation, contact form, 3 uniques, right? And our uniques, I'm focused on unit economics. I'm focused on technology, like real technology systems.
Yeah.
And I'm focused on culture, right? Culture, our internal culture, and why our customers love us. So those are our uniques. Estimated initial investment, let's just go in this case, we're a retail concept. You could get in for less than around $300,000 to $400,000. I have an item 19 that is showing top line numbers, gross sales 1.2 million, and maybe I'm showing some gross profit at the company owned level of, say, $180,000, which of course I'm not paying royalties. So, if we extrapolate, it's going to be, after I do franchise adjustments, say it's $120,000 margin or profit.
Well, I would say the first thing you would do is start running some lead generation, because as I said, the best case is you close a deal and you've got a franchise fee and a franchisee to start with. But if you go onto social media or portals or any of the great lead generation businesses out there, I would start there, because one reason you want to start there is you're going to learn what you're missing. Second reason you're going to start there is, I'm telling you, don't go and call the portal and say, why is this lead the name is fake or the phone number is not real. Get over that. It's the reality of lead gen. If you're in franchising, if you're in legal, if you're in sell couches, I don't care what you sell, lead gen, you got to have leads coming in. Some are going to be great. Some are not going to be great. It's not the lead gen's fault. People go on Google, they type in different things. It's just part of lead gen. But I would do that, because another reason is, again, you're learning, you're figuring out what people like and don't like. Or you might say, wow, this is really hard, and I can't believe brokers do this all day long, and I should really figure out how to get in with the brokers, because brokers are very special what they do. If you think about it, they have to take leads, raw leads. I was talking to someone that was part of an FSO. I was becoming a broker, and I had given them some advice, which was, don't make the mistake. You're an amazing salesperson. Don't get me wrong. You're an amazing franchise development leader, this person I was giving advice to. But don't forget the widget that you were part of, or the platform that you were part of, right? So you were getting candidates from a broker who kissed 100 frogs before getting the prince, and then they chose your FSO to send their best candidate out of the 3 that they got to talk to, and they sent it to you. And yeah, they're on the phone with you, pre-qualified, ready to go, and you are great at what you do, but don't forget all the layers that happened before they ever got to. So I think if you start calling some leads yourself as a franchisor, you might, like I said, it might make you even more motivated to work with brokers. But I would spend the money on the lead gen right away. And even if, I know you might say, well, what if their story's not perfect? You're going to learn that as you go, because you look on a Zoom call and your candidate's eyes are glossing over, then go back to the lab and figure out what's wrong.
Yeah, I love that starting point. And again, it's about that franchise IQ, right? So you're learning as you're doing this lead gen. So work on those organic leads, and let's do some paid social media ads. I'm not a big fan of portals, but like you know better than me. So I like your mindset on it. I especially like it from the viewpoint of you're building your knowledge base and you're going to see where the holes are, right? Which I that's been communicated to me often. And then your point, Dan, yeah, for any franchisor listening to this, where I cringe sometimes is where a franchisor goes, yeah, I'm just going to offer the broker more money. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You got to understand the broker is a small business owner that is spending his or her dollars every month for lead gen, then building out the team to qualify these leads, and then needs to know when they refer someone to you, that if the experience needs to be so great that if they don't want to buy your franchise, they're going to come back to that broker. Right. That's the mindset. And then the FSOs, I think, I got to give credit to the FSOs in terms of the business discipline. They're succeeding for good reasons. They're smart, hardworking, and they're operating at a high level. So I think those are good points. Okay. So we spent money, social media, we spent money on portals.
Yeah.
What is that going to feel like, Dan? I'm spending the money and what's coming back to me? Like, what should I expect? Like, this sucks, or, hey, I'm getting these crazy leads, or what is going to be that initial reaction? Oh, I spent too little, or what's some of the initial feedback I'm going to get?
Gray hairs and stress eating.
Okay.
You're going to be stressed because you can think like, what the hell am I doing? I listened to that podcast. Dan Claps told me to spend money on leads, and
Right.
I hate that guy. I think you'll feel nervous as all hell. It's a scary thing, franchising. You signed up to do something that's extraordinary, right? And it's amazing, but it's hard in the beginning. I think there's two grassroots things that I would do that I didn't really talk about, which number one, I was just telling this, I have a team of people that we're working on my next thing. We're figuring out what we're doing as a team. And I said to them, look, this is our plan. I want you to go home and I want you to tell like friends and family about what we're looking for. Every single person you touch, I want you to tell what we're looking for, because our network will expand if you do that. Right. So I think the first thing, just like when you first start, as a lawyer, you go around telling people that you're an attorney. I think you should get crazy, relentless. Like, go watch The Founder with Ray Kroc and how he was like signing checks on the golf course while his friends were, golfing at the country club. They're like, look at this weirdo, he won't stop talking about franchising. But that's what I would do. I would run around. I would get like, I would go to my customers. I would take my customer database and I would promote the franchise opportunity through email, through marketing, through, if you're in food, through marketing it. And I'm sure you've already learned this if you've gone through a great franchise company, but I would shout at the rooftops to get my first one or two franchisees and really promote the heck out of it to my local market. And everywhere I go, on the airplane, at the bar, I'd wear a shirt that says I'm a franchisor, just relentless. And then I would take time and do podcasts like this. It's amazing to me. If you get on other people's podcasts and you keep doing podcasts, it feels like you're like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. No, you will find franchisees. There's a great franchisor I really look up to, Bennett Maxwell. He's the Dirty Dough founder. And what he did was he did exactly what I just said, Charles. He bought the business. He surrounded himself with a bunch of people that were executives that know how to run a franchise company. And granted, he's a sales guy, but he went out there and he just sold, telling everybody, podcasts, promoting, running around, getting the name out there. So a lot of this podcast, I gave a lot of advice on how you can do things through broker groups or spending money. But I think also to get that first or second franchisee, you could do it through grassroots if you really put the energy into it.
Dan, and taking that another step, right, from a mindset point of view, you get those first one or two. now you're building, what we speak about with our clients is let's build around them. Let's take this static operations manual and turn it into videos and live training modules. Let's super support them. Let's get their numbers great. Let's build up our item 19. Let's tell their story. And then that's where that momentum and, that flywheel starts spinning. So I think that's critical advice on that front.
Yeah.
Dan, so in our imaginary business here, right, we've spent money on social media. So first of all, we're focused on organic. Our goal is 1 to 2 deals, organic network. We're building up IQ. Now, in terms of spending dollars, more IQ building with possible lead gen, which I agree. Like, let's look at our processes. They may suck, right? A lead comes in. Why does our process suck? From what's our first conversation through, what's our discovery session? Any more imaginary dollars we're investing in, we're going to join a broker group, right? So in my scheme, maybe we do it 6 months from now, more IQ building. Any more dollars we could spend on lead gen anywhere?
Any more dollars you could. So we talked about the broker groups. We're talking about, social media. We're talking about portals.
Right.
There's other great lead generation companies. I think PR, it depends on, if you've got the budget for PR, because now, again, here's the compounding effect. You're running around your neighborhood and your local area selling franchises like a lunatic, like, Ray Kroc. And I'm using Ray Kroc as an example just because he, if you watch the movie, he's just like, all he does is talk about opening McDonald's everywhere he goes. And it paid off for him. But I think doing the PR component could be really helpful because you could take that PR and you can apply it to now when you're organically or grassroots marketing. You can use that PR piece. Like, I was on the Jordan Belfort podcast recently, and that PR has been helpful for me for the past, I don't know, couple of weeks. Just I'm running around trying to find what I'm going to do next. Like I just gave the advice, but then I have the PR piece to lean into. I think franchisors could do that too.
Well, and Dan, I agree. So, and I think there's innovation in PR also in the sense that, so I have a flight tomorrow to Nashville, right? So maybe I'll see Delta, Sky Miles, a magazine, whatever. So I'll see an ad about a franchisor. I'm not a big fan of that type of PR. I like the PR that's advancing the brand story, like building that story arc for the exact point you're making. And what we discussed earlier, which is every dollar you spend has to multi-purpose. So I don't want that PR piece to disappear. Oh, that PR piece is about the founder. It's about our technology. It's about, and then all of a sudden that flows into the communications with candidates, the paid leads on my social media and reinforces. So I agree with that. You know what, Dan? I think we've unlocked some secrets. I think we've done worthy of the title here. Dan, for your podcast, how could people get to that?
You just Google Franchise Founders Podcast. It pops right up. It's on Apple and Spotify, Franchise Founders Podcast.
If you're open to it, I'd love to do more of this and have more conversations. And by the way, everyone's listening, right? Check out Dan's podcast. Also, when you pay for those portal leads and you're not satisfied with them.
and not just portal. I mean, you could do social media. You could do YouTube ads. You could do Facebook ads. Yeah. But don't call me.
No, Dan, I think this is part of the winning game plan. Thanks so much, Dan.